الحمد لله وكفى والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين سبحان ربك رب العزة أما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Yesterday we discussed in detail various masail regarding water. So we covered some of the important aspects of water. And I just wanted to touch on one of the questions that was raised after yesterday's session regarding water. And then inshallah we'll begin a short discussion of wudu. This concept of abundant water and minimal water, or abundant water and minuscule water, which is called, actually abundant water is called ma'ul-kathir, and then minuscule is called qalil, little. There was a question about how do you know how much water is abundant, and how do you know how much water is minuscule. And actually I told you yesterday that 200 liters is sort of the dividing point. So if you have more than 200 liters, it's considered abundant, kathir, and if you have less than 200 liters, it's considered small, qalil. Or if you have running water, it's also considered kathir. So greater than 200 liters or running water is kathir, and less than that, less than 200 liters is qalil. And of course, the only time when this comes into play, the only time when you need to divide water according to the amount, is when when an impurity gets mixed in it. So if you mix an impurity into little water, then even a single drop of impurity will make the entire water impure. Whereas if you mix impurity into a larger body of water, greater than 200 liters, then only when one of the characteristics of the water is changed by that impurity will the water become impure. Now, this discussion of, how do you define little water and a lot of water? How do you distinguish between kathir and qalil? Actually, within the hadith, you find this term which is used actually by the Shafi'i madhab, which is called qillatain. It's a unit of measure, and qillatain equals about something a little bit over 200 liters. Now the Hanafi madhab actually doesn't accept those hadith as proper proof for distinguishing between a lot of water and a little water. And the original view within the Hanafi madhab was that, according to Imam Abu Hanifa originally, was that basically the person who is in front of the water, they can make a decision themselves. They can tell whether it's a lot of water or a little water, and that he left it up to the person involved in the circumstance. But as time progressed, his students, and especially during the time of Imam Muhammad, the students would always ask, well, what do you mean by a lot of water? It's still unclear, and the people were confused. So Imam Muhammad, on one occasion while he was teaching his dars, and he was asked this question several times, actually said there is a water basin outside of this masjid where he was teaching his dars. That would be considered the defining amount which would make water abundant. So then the students went out and they measured that, and it ended up measuring something 10 by 10, 10 arm lengths by 10 arm lengths. And it was deep enough such that when you removed water from it, you couldn't see the bottom of the basin. So it was just a big basin where people would make wudu. And you see this in traditional masajid as well, where they'll have this big area where people can make wudu, and people just walk up to it, and the water's sort of there, and then they make wudu from that water. So that concept of 10 by 10 actually originated there. And the reason I'm touching upon it really doesn't apply to us too much in this day and age, because basically we open the tap and we use the water. So we're not going to have anything in our house that's 200 liters of water. The only real issue was the washing machine, and we discussed that yesterday. But the reason why I'm discussing it is because if you ever pursue a serious study of fiqh, you'll see throughout our books that it says abundant water is 10 by 10, such that if you remove a scoop of it, you don't see the bottom of the basin. And so I wanted to touch upon it so that those of you who take this study more seriously and go into deeper books of fiqh, when you read this concept of 10 by 10, you'll know what's being spoken of. In essence, though, one of the ulama of India, a very, very famous alim, actually one day made a 10 by 10 basin and made the amount of two qillatain, and he compared the amount, and they were about the same, and they equaled approximately something slightly over 200 liters, which is where I'm getting this 200 liter number from. So just so you know. why I'm saying 200 liters. So basically, in the end, it all works out to be the same. The Shafi'i madhab and the Hanafi madhab, the amount of water that's considered abundant is basically the same. And in this day and age, with tap water, it really doesn't apply as much. So that's the background that I wanted to give regarding water. The next section, once you understand water, is to understand wudu. And this is always the section that's brought after the section on water. And the reason is because the most common use that we have for water in our daily life, and water being a tool of purification, the most common use that we have for water is actually to perform the wudu. When we use water on a daily basis, we probably don't even drink as much water as we do use to make wudu. So wudu is the primary thing that we use water for. It's the primary type of purification that we try to attain with water. So therefore, most books of fiqh, once they discuss water, will then subsequently go on to discuss wudu. So that's what I'd like to touch on today, inshallah. Now, wudu is one of the most essential